table area. I'm like,
We're having, by the way, South
How did he
Florida,
know?
we're having an in-depth conversation about our best ramrod stories. And our ramrod expert at the table tonight at the dais is Nora. Nora, tell us about your experience
being rammed by a rod.
Patty is going to be shocked.
I'm going to take Patty to the
To a ramrod?
Ramrod.
Yeah.
Wear some really tight leather, but I am the world's worst lesbian.
Yeah.
I thought we were talking about Al's birthday party next week.
Yeah.
No, we're
Is that at the
birthday party in
Ramrod?
Apparently.
America.
It could be all kinds of places.
He's getting adventurous in his old
It's
age.
a new decade anniversary for me.
4, 3, 2.
Well, welcome to Queer News Tonight, the world's first and only LGBTQ daily evening news. It's time to queer up the news. It is 8 p.m. Tuesday, July 6th. Gosh, can you believe it's July 6th?
Wow.
And we are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. So many of your important stories we're going to tell this evening on Queer News Tonight. This is the world's first live daily LGBTQ+ evening news show. Literally out of the closet and into the headlines on Queer News Tonight with Al Ferguson.
Thank you for joining Queer News Tonight. This is the world's first and only unedited live LGBTQ+ evening news show. Whatever happens, you will see it. Queer News Tonight is supported by viewers like you. We are part of the Happening Out television network, Hotspots Magazine, and We Meg Events. Hotspots is celebrating 35 years of the LGBTQ+ experience. Merged, we bring you the best of LGBTQ+ news, entertainment, and support of our LGBTQ+ community.
This evening, we bring you the news of and a perspective representing the LGBTQ+ community from South Florida, America, and across our planet. I'm your anchor at Queer News Tonight, Al Ferguson, and let's welcome anchor Tony Lima. He is the CEO of Ariana's Center Trans-Latina Florida, one of the nation's most important trans rights and service organizations. He is a longtime South Florida LGBTQ activist and political advocate, as well as the anchor of the world's weekly trans talk show with trans hosts called, of course, Translation. Good evening, Tony.
Good evening, Al. And I'm the translator. Make sure that you're watching us every Thursday night at 9 p.m. and see the magic we create for that hour. It's really a fantastic show. Now we're going to welcome anchor Misty Eyes, who's also on Translation. She is the Director of Transgender Services, Women's Services, and Training and Education for SunServe, one of the Florida's most important social service agencies serving the LGBTQ+ community. She is a highly celebrated and award-winning entertainer, MC, journalist, and drag queen. Good evening, Misty.
Hola, buenas noches.
That makes sense.
To you. Now let's welcome
Faye's
anchor
at the
Schaffer
table.
Zaret. Does she do that? Who knew? Welcome Schaffer Zaret. She is a trans activist, panel speaker, and director of development of Prideline, South Florida's oldest direct services nonprofit organization for LGBTQ youth. Her values are based on service to her community in project management and coalition building. Welcome, Schaffer.
Hello, thank you for having me. It's great to be here. And finally, let's welcome anchor Nora Rotella, a founding partner of Rotella and Hernandez, a full-service immigration and family law firm. She is a Supreme Court certified family law mediator and was co-chair of the Gay and Lesbian Lawyers Association and winner of Florida's Legal Elite Award. Good evening, Nora.
Thank you so much, Schaffer, and thank God that they shortened that bio. For a whole minute was on my bio. So good evening, everyone. We are the reporters for Queer News Tonight, and this evening we begin with the queer headlines. The LGBTQ+ community in South Florida and across America is diverse. Our community across the world is vast, and here are the bullet points of the queer news for today, Tuesday, July 6th.
Let's begin by queering up the world. Brazilian presidential hopeful Eduardo Leite,
Something like that.
something close to that, comes
Leite.
out, right, comes out, Leite, thank you, comes out as, of course, we make the joke, he comes
This is
out
5 out, keep going.
as gay. A leading politician in Brazil who is planning on challenging Jair Bolsonaro in presidential elections next year has come out as gay. Leite made the revelation on Thursday night during an interview with broadcaster TV Globo. In the interview, Leite said, quote, "I have never spoken about a subject related to my private life, but during this moment of low integrity in Brazil, I have nothing to hide. I'm gay, and I'm a governor who is gay rather than a gay governor. Just as Obama in the United States wasn't a black president, but a president who was black. And I am proud of this."
I love the
quote.
way he phrases that.
Yeah.
That is so beautiful.
Amazing moment.
And what an amazing juxtaposition to everything that Bolsonaro has been.
Ugh.
Like, we
Yeah.
need his youth, we need his queerness, we need his new thoughts. This is an exciting moment for Brazil.
All of the transgender hate crimes over the last year combined in other countries won't even match the Brazil hate crimes for trans people. It is astonishing. They literally have a Trump. Jair Bolsonaro?
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's disgusting.
And as the world's worst lesbian, I just wanted to add my own comment. In reading this article, it was a little bit troubling to me to see that Leite actually supported Bolsonaro in his run for the presidency the last time. So it's a little bit confusing, if you will, or troubling, at least to me, that we have this individual who's coming out as gay, but having supported Bolsonaro, who is anti-gay, right? So
Maybe he
interesting.
wanted to be alive.
Well,
Yeah.
and I'm sorry, you go ahead if you.
No, I was just going to say, I think part of it is playing politics, but the other part of it is now maybe finding that comfort and courage to be visible. That is advantageous, but it's also, regardless, it's still a big step, I think.
It is a gigantic step.
Yeah.
Brazil has a robust LGBTQ plus community. Most here in South Florida would be shocked that no such big festivals like Pride Fort Lauderdale and Miami Beach Pride. The largest pride in the world is in Brazil, in Sao Paulo. 2 million people come to
Wow.
Sao Paulo Pride. It is a country that has two sides to it, and they're opposing two sides. One of which is it's a dynamic country that has a lot of internal hate, and their internal hate is toward women, which is part of the issue that goes on in trans, and part of the hate is toxic masculinity, which is the hate that goes on toward gay men. And so as a result, that's why Brazil is really a terrible place for our community. For him to do this is dramatic. It would be like being surprised in a presidential election where President Trump is in office and Pete Buttigieg announces in an interview after already being the opposing candidate that he was gay. This is really gigantic news. And of course, everyone at Queer News Tonight will be following this story
Yeah.
closely.
And if Leite wins, we're going to be taking a field trip as a cast.
Right.
Next, let's queer up LGBTQ plus history. A New Orleans gay bar, Inferno, killed 32. Roy Reed was first to report the truth. The late journalist and New Orleans resident Roy Reed, who passed away in 2017, is perhaps best known for his enterprising civil rights era coverage in the New York Times. He wrote extensively about attacks on marginalized communities, like Bloody Sunday in Selma, Alabama. On June 24, 1973, he received a call in the early morning from the New York Times Annex in New York City, asking him to report on a fire in New Orleans. This was the Upstairs Lounge fire, a notorious arson attack on a gay bar that would claim 32 lives. His 700-plus word front page story in the New York Times, entitled "Flash Fire in New Orleans Kills at Least 32 in Bar," would be the only special report on the tragedy to inform the public of the bar's homosexual clientele the next morning. Other major market publications ignored or obscured the reality that the destruction of the Upstairs Lounge was an intentionally set blaze that killed gay men.
It's probably important to note that this intentional blaze was also set by a gay man. It was a escort that was repeatedly kicked out of the club, and I think he was just very mean, and he kept saying, "I'm going to set this building on fire, I'm going to set this building on fire," and they kept kicking him out, and he did set it on fire. At first I thought it was a hate crime. That's why it's like research on my Google, like, oh, we're talking about this? What happened? But it wasn't a hate crime.
Well, that's good to know, at least. I mean, not that it makes the fire any better,
still
but,
whitewashed.
and the
Right.
deaths of 32 individuals, but nevertheless, I think the way you present some of these stories makes a difference, right?
I'm curious, were any of you really very familiar with this story?
I
Of the
really
Upstairs
wasn't at all,
Lounge?
no.
Yeah.
I had heard about it before, not to the amount of detail that Misty just shared, but to me, I thought that was one of the first noted hate crimes in our country against gay people.
Yeah. It's interesting, and a lot of people are going to say, why are you reporting this story? And we have just finished Pride Month, but this happens in the last week of traditional June Pride Month. Of course, that didn't happen in 1973, but I just give context to this event. Stonewall's riots had taken place just 4 years earlier, and we get through Pride Month, and we frequently have no focus on this event at all. Even though the perpetrator of the arson was gay, we don't talk about the tragic event that it had on so many gay lives. Right. And we come back to this to say, well, we have just finished Gay Pride Month, but there was almost no recognition of the Upstairs Lounge fire. And up until what we know happened in 2016, this was the largest mass LGBTQ plus event in American history. Of course, unfortunately, that was eclipsed at the Pulse massacre. But it's something as an example that I think when we concentrate on our prides and our celebrations and our parades and other issues, it's a reminder that we need to do better in learning and teaching our LGBTQ history, because this was a major moment in our community's history.
Now we queer up drag queen culture. Founder of Drag Queen Story Hour writes adorable children's book. There's a fun book available for kids written by one of the founding members of Drag Queen Story Hour and playing off the wheels on the bus. And you're going to want to buy this for your kiddos as soon as possible.
How does that go, the wheels of the bus?
The Wheels on the Bus Go Round and Round is the original book. But according to the book's description, the hips on the drag queen go swish, swish, swish. It is a fun, freewheeling celebration of being your most fabulous self, which encourages readers to boldly be exactly who they are. This playful picture book offers a quirky twist on a classical nursery rhyme by illustrating all the ways to work it. The story follows a drag queen who performs her routine in front of an awestruck audience. A fun frenzy of fierceness, this book will appeal to readers of all ages. The author has been sharing some seriously adorable posts of her word baby out in the world being enjoyed by families. Quote, "In honor of my book's first birthday, I'm posting photos of kids and families enjoying it all in their fabulosity. Truly nothing makes me happier than to see these out in the world," end quote.
I heard that you recently did this book at a drag queen reading.
Yes.
What happened?
This year for Pride, I read Drag Queen Storytime in Miami at the Children's Museum of Discovery and Science, which is why I wasn't at the Aqua event. And I read Drag Queen Storytime at the Fort Lauderdale Museum of Discovery and Science. And at the Museum of Discovery and Science, I did read this twice to the children. And it's cute. It goes, the hips on the drag queen goes swish, 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 swish. The hair on the drag queen goes up, 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 up,
Oh,
up,
that's so
up, up.
cute.
It's really adorable. But I would say that it's geared mostly for very young children.
Now, the producer of the show is telling me that Tucker Carlson's on the phone right now, saying, "Why are we promoting the destruction of children?" No.
He
my
wants a
goodness.
copy. That's what he wants.
He has the copy.
I think this is very positive. As we talk about all the time on all of the shows on Happening Out Television Network, representation matters. And this is a book that I would love to give to my brother for my 3-year-old nephew so that they can read it to him, right? Because it's really showing the best of diversity and
Yeah.
the best of our community.
When I was reading it, one of the little kids looked at me and goes, "Are you a drag queen?" I was like, "Can you not see my hair is up, up, up?" I had very big hair.
Did you do any of the
Swish, swish, swish.
Okay, one of them was the shoulders of the drag queen go shimmy, shimmy, shimmy. And I didn't do that
Child.
because
Now that's dangerous.
I
for
was
a
like,
child.
there's
Concussion.
so many dads there and lesbian moms there. I was like, shh. I was afraid. You know, I was like,
So
maybe
you
I
did
shouldn't
do
do that.
Yeah, I think you
More
made the right
PG.
choice.
I was like,
You made the right choice.
shimmy, shimmy, shimmy. It was very children friendly.
Those pictures were so adorable.
It was a good
See
time.
you doing it and the kids. And
I enjoy it.
And next, let's queer up the Supreme Court. Supreme Court spurns bid from Washington florist who declined to make arrangement for gay wedding. The Supreme Court on Friday turned away an appeal from a florist in Washington state who declined to make an arrangement for a gay couple's wedding because of her religious beliefs, spurning another legal battle that pits religious freedom against LGBTQ rights. In declining to hear the case of Boronel Stutzman, the owner of Arlene's Flowers, the High Court leaves in place a lower court ruling that found she violated a state civil rights law that bars discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation. 3 of the court's conservative justices, Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito, and Neil Gorsuch, said they would have heard the case.
Well, I think this is a great win. I think ultimately a win is a win is a win.
Absolutely.
But it's still a little bit confusing, right? Because we have this case where they declined to take it up, where you have someone declining services, floral services, but then you have the story of the baker, right, in Colorado, and how, you know, the baker, they
And
ended up...
Catholic services in Philadelphia.
Correct.
Yeah, it's
So-
contradictory.
Correct. So we have a few rulings that are just a bit inconsistent, right? So it leaves, I think, us exposed to can someone discriminate against us for services such as these?
Yeah.
So
They are trying to capitalize on the fact that LGBTQ people are dangerous and scary, but this is snowball effect. If this were to pass, that, oh, sure, you don't have to serve the cake or the flowers to the gay people, but then it piggybacks and it becomes the Jewish people, it becomes the black people, it becomes whatever hate group that I don't like today because somebody else was able to reject, I can reject. So I'm glad that the Supreme Court has sided with us yet again.
Well, that's the big difference. That's why we need the Equality Act. Right? Because those classes that you just mentioned are all protected. We're the ones, LGBTQ people, are not protected in situations like this. So it's important that we all continue to support the Equality Act and bring it up to our Congress people as much as possible, because this kind of stuff is still happening in this country over and over again.
I'm certainly glad that they chose not to hear the case. That's a win. I agree with Nora. So the lower court ruling stands, and that supports LGBTQ equality. What's most interesting to me about this story is the ruling vote. It's 6-3, and what we're watching is we have a 6-3 conservative majority in the court right now, and it's one of the reasons why the consideration of the resignation of one of our 3 justices that are more liberal-minded is important, so it doesn't get stuck next year and get caught potentially in the midterm elections. But what's interesting to me is that 3 of these conservative justices are flip-flopping like fish on a dock, and you can't quite understand why they're doing it yet. They are not Trumpsters, even though many of them were appointed by Trump. They are not uber conservatives. They're not uber supporting evangelical issues. So it's confusing in terms of this vote, and that's what I think we should watch the most of, is this majority and why the 3 conservatives are making the decision that they're making. Those are the comments that we want to listen to and read the most, because that's going to tell us where we're sitting in the next number of years in LGBTQ rights.
yeah. We'll be following that story right along, but next let's queer up gay culture. So a mom put a rainbow flag up outside her home, and this note she received is amazing. A grateful son has shared the letter his mom received through her door after she hung a rainbow flag up outside her house. The son Levi, 30, said that he gave his mom, Stephanie Robertson, and some friends the flag last year. He said she was excited to pardon me, let me back up. He said, quote, she was excited to hang it up for the first time this year and kept it hanging up outside her home all throughout June, end quote. His mom was so excited when someone left a letter on the mailbox that she couldn't wait to share it. The letter Stephanie received said, quote, hello, this is probably kind of weird, but I walk past your house every day and I've noticed your flag, and I'm glad to know there is at least one ally in this little town, end quote. It was signed a young LGBTQ person.
This story warms my heart, because this is the kind of courage that this lady had that needs to be happening basically everywhere, not only in June during Pride Month, but all the time. Like, what a beautiful thing to happen.
I'm not crying.
You're crying.
You're crying.
No, it touches me too. I grew up in a very small town, Anchorage, but I mean, it's small in reality. Yeah. It's a city, but it's very, very, very small. And I know what narrow-minded small-town people do, and I know what narrow-minded small-town people think. And to see allyship, and when I do my trainings, I always tell people that being an ally is not a noun. It is a verb.
Yeah.
It's doing something. It's interruptive behavior. It's acting. It's not just like, yeah, I'm cool with it. That's not allyship. And this was a mom being an ally.
And it's really important beyond just being able to walk down the aisle at Target and see rainbow merchandise to get in the car, go home, be in your neighborhood and see a flag like that, that someone had the courage to put it up outside their house and to be so impacted by that. I mean, I can just, when I read the story, I go back to being like a 6, 7, 8-year-old thinking like, where's the representation? Where is like someone that accepts me for who I am? And so I just think it's beautiful and we need more of that.
I was going to say that the thing that jumps off the page for me on this story is the mom is clearly an ally, and the mom, first off, you can't make the assumption that mom is going to be an ally, because there's countless examples of parent rejection of their LGBT youth and their children. This mother chose not to do that and held that flag for an entire year to get ready for Pride. The most important thing that washes over me on this story is an ally because if this mother never does anything except for her son, never does anything ever again, she has tangibly affected one young, as they identify as a young LGBTQ person. That is an ally. That expression that positively benefited a single person. They're not talking to thousands. They're not social media where thousands of people are watching your videos. It is a simple act of flying a flag and say, I stand with you. And it landed on one young LGBTQ person. That is allyship, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Now we queer up the USA. Disney World, Disneyland drop boys and girls reference. Watch this.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, dreamers of all ages. In just a few minutes, the Magic Kingdom invites you to enjoy our nighttime spectacular, Happily Ever After. Good evening, dreamers of all ages. In just a few minutes, the Magic Kingdom invites you to enjoy our nighttime spectacular, Happily Ever After.
For decades, the nightly fireworks show at Disneyland in California and Disney World in Florida began with this introduction. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, dreamers of all ages. That changed on Wednesday when testing for the post-COVID return of the fireworks show began. The new announcement states simply, good evening, dreamers of all ages. The updated genderless statement was included in the 4th of July show, the formal reintroduction of the nightly fireworks display at both parks. The modified introduction will extend to other Disney amusement parks, specifically Tokyo Disneyland. I love this.
Yeah.
I think it's great.
I love this too, and I think that it's funny that the haters are going to hate no matter what, but they're making a mountain out of a molehill. It's not like they said, attention dreamers that are non-binary, genderqueer, male,
LGBTQ
Right.
all
plus,
transgender
Dreamers
people
of all
that are
ages.
figuring out their sexual identity and gender identity. They said all humans that are
and
dreamers.
SDI.
I'm a
Yeah.
dreamer too, people. What about me? No, but they're making a mountain out of a molehill for real. Like, come on, they did not offend anybody. Why do you have to put boys and girls back?
You know what hits me about this? I remember as a young gay, not that long ago.
Last year,
Yes, thank you. No, this is probably 15, 20 years ago when I first...
at least 2 decades.
No, not that bad. Why are you all like...
Welcome to the 1974 broadcast of
Can
Queer
I have
News
my moment,
Tonight.
people? Let me have my
Last
moment.
year, keep going.
I remember being at Gay Days and there being protesters outside.
sure, yeah.
And people being very, very careful as they walked into the park. Me and my friends included, we would
Wearing
walk
the
in
red.
and worried what was going to happen potentially to us, right? To have this happen during arguably probably the most populated time at the park when the fireworks display is going to start is an incredible thing. It's progress, it's evolution, it's beautiful, and it warms my heart.
It is. I think it's wonderful. I mean, when they say dreamers of all ages, I have friends my age or older than I that go to Disney World on a weekend basis very often. So, I mean, you're just encompassing everybody. And I think it's a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
And Schaffer, you went to UCF in Orlando. What do you think about Disney World saying, we're not going to say boys and girls?
I think it, again, we talk about representation, we talk about these moments where people can be out in the public and kind of hear and see and be able to dream about who they can be, because that's who they are. And so I think it's really powerful, but it also provides, beyond that visibility and representation, it provides young people the opportunity to witness discourse by their loved ones, by people that maybe don't agree. And maybe that isn't always so positive, but it's important for that discourse to take place, because it's important to allow for someone to experience, like, okay, someone had this opinion, but like, I'm going to go find support in other ways.
I have to say, as a young child in Florida, I went to opening day at the Magic Kingdom in 1972 or 1973.
Tony, I was waiting for you to say when.
I was there too.
Nora, look at my reaction.
as a
I
kid,
was looking right at you.
Really long time ago.
Right, 72 or 73. I
How
can't
old were you?
remember
40
which.
some years
42.
ago.
Yeah. Hater. And it's really interesting because, good evening, boys and girls. I've heard that phrase at the parks before the fireworks literally countless times. That's my first note. So when I heard that announcement and the voice announcement of it, and you can see more, the original voice from the 70s talked about this moment of the change and how excited he was in the change.
It was a guy's voice?
Not this, but the original.
Oh.
The original, I
him
do remember
talking
that.
about it.
Yeah.
The second thing is, I want to disagree with Misty just slightly.
Oh, how dare you.
Let's make a mountain out of a molehill, because what Disney quietly does without saying one word, the video that we just showed you, we took out the low quality of the video, was an iPhone that somebody just took standing on Main Street to do that. So the voice that you heard was just the iPhone capture, because Disney never said one word on this change. Fabulous that they never even draw attention to going, wait, we're not going to bring any attention to gender identity. We don't need to. That's fabulous. Now, let's make a mountain out of a molehill, because what was happening in June of 2020, we were in full war on gender identity, especially in trans. Why? Because of a president named Donald Trump.
And in Florida.
And 12 months later, we come to Pride, June 2021, and Disney goes, gender identity is not important, and we are not going to bash trans people or any identity by focusing on gender identity. Why? In 2021, we have President Biden. It's a mountain over a molehill. And I just think it's absolutely fantastic that they never even said one word about it.
That is pretty neat.
Love it, Disney.
So now let's queer up politics. And of course, I get this headline because I'm the only lesbian at the table.
It's called tokenism, Nora. Tokenism.
Biden nominates lesbian for ambassador level post. Chantal Wong would become the first openly lesbian ambassador if confirmed as the U.S. director of the Asian Development Bank. The White House, in a July 2nd press release that announced her nomination, describes Wong as, quote, a leading authority in international development policy with over 30 years of experience in the multidisciplinary field that includes finance, technology, and the environment, end quote. The Council for Global Equality is among the organizations that have celebrated Wong's nomination, tweeting, quote, we are thrilled with the nomination of Chantal Wong, our nation's first openly lesbian ambassador to represent our country. Extraordinarily qualified and long overdue, end quote.
You did that very well.
I did do that very well.
You're a very convincing lesbian.
I'm a very convincing lesbian, the world's worst lesbian.
Yes,
and I
we
think
believe you.
if
Did this story wash over you? Did you ever think about, at whatever point where you're going, oh, I might be, the identifications that come, does it ever cross your mind that you could see people in power, in significant powers, like an ambassador of the United States, represent what you were?
To be honest with you, I mean, I think it was something that was expected, right? With so much change that we've seen, at least through my life, it is something that I was sort of expecting would happen at some point.
You know, lesbians aren't real.
They are real.
Oh, okay.
We are real. Right here. But I think it's wonderful. I mean, listen, aside from her being a lesbian, she seems to be a very qualified individual. She worked, from what I understand of her history, she worked for the Clinton administration. She also was part of the Obama administration. So you have a qualified individual who is also a lesbian, which I think is wonderful. And I think we need more women out there, more lesbian women in power.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
You know, I just have to say, in terms of taking the highlighter of making the joke, well, you're our token. Well, we're all our tokens at the table. We, in different ways, we all are. Just think about the last 150 days. We have a presidential candidate that's the first cabinet member. We have a trans person as undersecretary of Health and Human Services. We have a LGBTQ person that is basically a commander general in the White House to help orchestrate and connect all of the dots for the LGBTQ community. We have a vice president that might as well be a lesbian. She speaks up for our community so much. And we have this new example. I have never in my entire life, yes, Tony, my long entire life,
I wasn't going to say a
I
word.
have never seen such embracement that we have seen to our community in the last 150 days. We should be just celebrating and going to bed every night going, wow, we are arriving. We're arriving.
So that is our queer headlines for today. So let's catch up on the LGBTQ plus news surrounding COVID-19 with our special segment called Quarantine Quickies.
Queer News Tonight has been LGBTQ as America's most important news source on the pandemic, as we have reported on coronavirus in every news broadcast since January 6, 2020.
Tonight, we report the devastating effect coronavirus has had on the American and worldwide LGBTQ plus community in total cases and deaths.
But we also provide hope of a new light at the end of this long tunnel. First, we report that as of tonight, more than 2,422,000 LGBTQ plus Americans have contracted COVID-19.
We've watched the greatest single-year LGBTQ plus health crisis of our lifetimes. More than 43,000 LGBTQ plus Americans have died from coronavirus.
But the news is improving because as of today, more than 330 million vaccination doses have been administered in the United States.
That is our COVID-19 news for tonight. Next, we report that Happening Out Television Network is passionate about our support for the LGBTQ plus community.
An example is Sunshine Cathedral, the world's largest queer church here in Fort Lauderdale. We are broadcasting from our permanent set here at Sunshine and supporting that partnership.
The network broadcasts the largest LGBTQ plus religious broadcast in the world, with more than 30,000 watching every Sunday at 10:30 a.m. Eastern, and it's totally live.
We encourage you to tune in. Our campaign of sponsorship proudly supports Sunshine Cathedral is my queer church. Watch this.
I'm James Wallington.
I'm Will Jardell, and we are the winners of The Amazing Race.
We made history as the first LGBTQ plus contestants to get engaged while competing across the world on the show.
Oh, and we also won the $1 million.
And Sunshine Cathedral is my queer church.
Very good.
Finally, we thank Queer News Tonight's hotel sponsor, Best Western I-95 Fort Lauderdale. This is the closest and best choice to the famous Wilton Drive, and our hosts and guests stay at this LGBTQ plus ally partner. We encourage you to stay here when visiting South Florida.
And let's welcome to Queer News Tonight's Q&A on LGBTQ plus health and pandemic. For nearly a year, this segment has been unique in America, answering your LGBTQ plus community questions about our unique health needs. We are proud to have Queer News Tonight health anchor Dr. Howard Grossman.
He's an American pioneer in HIV/AIDS medical treatment and was the executive director of the American Academy of HIV Medicine. He is a nationally recognized medical expert and proud member of our LGBTQ plus community.
Before we move into questions that we have tonight, good evening, Dr. Grossman. Howard, what are your thoughts about the health news that you have seen in our community this week?
Well, I think we've actually seen some good news about the coronavirus vaccines. We heard this week that, in fact, rather than waning immunity, it seems that people who've been vaccinated have an increase in their immunity over time, which is a really exciting thing and may mean that we actually don't need a booster vaccine. I know there's many people who say, oh, I don't want to get it because I'm going to need a booster vaccine. But the thing was, we never really knew whether that was true. But the fact that immunity seems to be increasing is I think, a good thing. The other piece of information we hear is that 99.1 or 0.2% of all hospitalizations are unvaccinated people. So again, reassuring that vaccinated people are safe, even with the new variant, as it sweeps across the country.
Yeah, and I want to provide a highlighter bullet point on that, Dr. Grossman. You have just reported that basically, if you're vaccinated, only 0.8% of hospitalizations are those that have been vaccinated. 99.2 or 99.1% of those that are being hospitalized are those that are not vaccinated. I got that right?
Yep, basically.
Yeah.
So really, the people who are getting hospitalized are unvaccinated with COVID, or unvaccinated people. And the other piece of information is that Florida has 15% of all the new COVID cases in the country.
Yeah, in fact, we're gonna ask a question about that specifically. Let's jump right into the questions that we have tonight. We're going to start with Misty.
Yeah, our first question. I saw a report that in India, they were scamming people by injecting saline solution instead of the COVID vaccine. Do you think this has happened elsewhere?
Hi, Misty. It was great working with you today.
I know. We did a training together for NSU students today.
Oh, nice.
India is a very interesting place. India has one of the most sophisticated medical systems in the world, if you have money. You can go to really great hospitals, but you go with your credit card in your hand and you pay for things as you go. But if you don't have the money, it unfortunately is a very impoverished system. And there are scammers everywhere. People are desperate in these countries for the vaccine, so I'm not surprised. I have not heard about it happening elsewhere, but we've seen people selling fake HIV drugs. There are scammers all over the world. I certainly haven't heard anything about that in this country.
Yeah. Okay.
And our second question.
We do have people selling fake cures here.
Cures.
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah, he lives up in Palm Beach County. And
Lights. All you need is lights.
yeah, bleach.
Our second question, Dr. Grossman, is more than half of U.S. states are showing rising numbers of COVID infections. Should we make vaccines mandatory?
Personally, I would say yes. From a public health standpoint, I would say yes. From a political standpoint, I can't see how that's going to happen when you have governors like ours and some of the others around the country who are going to tie it up in court for forever if anybody tried to mandate it. We've talked about this before, and Al and I both remember when the polio vaccine came out and in the 50s, and everybody in the country lined up for it. In churches and schools, the entire country lined up to get both vaccines. First the vaccine and then the sugar cube. And it was that's what you did as an American. You fought disease and you listened to the public health experts. And unfortunately, that we're not in that place.
And Dr. Grossman, it constantly confuses me. Perhaps you can provide light on this. Why there's this raging debate about going to school in the fall, and colleges that are requiring it, and school districts that are just considering making it mandatory. What's different now in COVID and all of the other vaccinations that have always been required? I don't see the difference in what the unique issues are, why COVID is different than other vaccines.
No, I think that's a really good point. I mean, if you don't get a measles, mumps, rubella vaccine as a kid, in many school districts, you have to be schooled at home. There's no difference with this. But we're in this anti-science period where. Excuse me one second.
Gonna close the door.
I told you, South Florida and America, we are a live show.
Sorry.
No problem.
We've lived in a place where for 30 years, certain groups have been working to dumb down America. And to ruin that idea of social cohesion. It's, let's face it, it's not just getting vaccines, and it's not just doing the right thing for public health. It's giving blood, donating blood, it's voting, all the things that once upon a time as a good citizen you did as a routine now have become politicized and made controversial.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. And now we move to the question that you were alluding to at the top of your introduction tonight. And Nora, you're going to help us with that.
I sure am. So, Doctor, this is the last question for tonight. Florida reported more new cases last week than there were at the peak last summer. Should we start social distancing again?
I think, again, it depends on whether you're vaccinated or not. If you're vaccinated, then no. I mean, we are fine. If you're not vaccinated, then you are putting yourselves and others at risk. And, let's face it, this Delta virus is already up to, I think, 30% of new cases. It's sweeping across the country. In a couple of weeks, it may become the dominant virus in the U.S. It is 4 times more transmissible than the previous variants, and it is sending young people to the hospital. So anybody who doesn't get vaccinated truly is risking themselves and every other unvaccinated person around them. But the people who are vaccinated can relax.
Yeah, I again, for the LGBTQ community that listened to what Dr. Grossman just said, Howard, I quote you at least a dozen times a week. Just at least, I'm not kidding, a dozen times a week. And what I try to make clear is this question is very confusing. Because of the World Health Organization and to a secondary way, the CDC. It is crystal clear. There's 2 conversations going on. One conversation is those that are vaccinated have a safety percentage in the perhaps 99 percentile. Right, it's basically, it's almost infallible. You hate to even crawl out on that limb to say it, but almost. And then the other conversation that we're having is the danger to the people who are not vaccinated. But if you're vaccinated in the LGBTQ community and you're going into our LGBT establishments, our events, our parties, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, you are protected. Did I get this right?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's the basics, Al. That's the simple message. Certainly, there are people who are vaccinated who are immunosuppressed, who may not respond to the vaccine. So again, those unvaccinated people are putting those people at risk too. That's just something as somebody who's on cancer chemotherapy and may be immunosuppressed still needs to be cautious. You can test to see if the vaccine was effective. There is a test for the spike antibody, and if it's over a certain amount, then you are considered to be immune. So you can go to your doctor and get that test and see whether the vaccine worked for you or not.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. But yes, there is this big difference, Al. And, you know, we've talked about the arguments people make against the vaccine. One, that it was developed too fast, completely ignoring 20 years of research into this type of vaccine and 20 years of research into COVID, into coronaviruses, and the fact that a previous vaccine was already developed and was safe, and the fact that the technology has changed, that we understood the structure of this virus within a matter of weeks. The second one is we don't know the long-term side effects, but we're out over a year at this point, and most side effects with vaccines show up in the first 2 to 3 months. And anytime there's been any signal of a problem, everything's been shut down until they can figure it out and make sure that it's not something new. And in fact, there really hasn't been anything very new to come up.
Yeah.
And then the third thing is that it needs to have FDA approval, whatever that means.
Yeah.
But I think there's a lot of disinformation out there and not enough education.
You know, and to me that's a bullet point to your observation about what is going on. We're going to look back on this time period of especially the last 8 months. And we're going to see the real consequences of the Tucker Carlsons and the Fox News and the Donald Trumps, et cetera, and so on, of how they have eluded us and dissuaded us to believe in the science, and how that has actually affected the process of coronavirus. The bottom line is, get the vaccine. It is safe and completely effective. Well, that is yeah.
One new myth we have to get rid of. And that's one that Ron Johnson from Wisconsin has pushed, is this large number of deaths blamed on the vaccine. And the thing is that when you look at the death rates and hospitalization rates, you have to realize they are reporting everybody who's hospitalized for whatever reason, okay, or who dies for whatever reason. So you could die for a heart attack, and he's blaming it on the vaccine, even though it has nothing to do with the vaccine. You could die from a car accident, and he's blaming it on the vaccine.
If you were vaccinated.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Right.
And don't even get us started on Senator Johnson. All right, well, that is tonight's Queer News Tonight's Q&A on LGBTQ health and pandemic. We are here every Tuesday with Dr. Howard Grossman to answer your questions. Do you need medical assistance? And of course the answer is yes, because we're the LGBTQ community. We encourage you to contact Midway Specialty Care Center with 10 locations in Florida, and especially Dr. Howard Grossman here in Wilton Manors and serving all across South Florida. Again, thank you, as always, Howard.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Grossman. So that is today's news for the LGBTQ plus community on the world's first and only daily LGBTQ plus evening news show. Is our community important to you?
Then help us by liking and subscribing. Ring the bell for notification updates. Share this news with your friends and family.
Post this broadcast in the many groups you're a member of. Tonight's stories about our community deserve the attention of your family and friends.
Queer News Tonight is the only live LGBTQ plus digital television news in the world that is out of the closet and into the headlines. We need your support.
If our community is to grow, we must tell our stories and bring them to the attention of the broader world. This is the only place in the entire world that tells these LGBTQ plus stories in motion and sound. That is the passion of Happening Out Television Network and Queer News Tonight. I'm your anchor, Al Ferguson, and on behalf of these LGBTQ plus reporters, the anchors of Queer News Tonight, including Tony Lima, Misty Eyes, Schaffer Zaret, and Nora Rotella.
Nora.
Nora. Did I say
Nutella.
Nora
Rotella.
Nutella.
Wait, I could have just said our token lesbian.
Our token lesbian.
Right.
Yes.
We will, but a bad one. Nora Rotella. I apologize. We will see you daily at 8 p.m. Good night.
Good night.